The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
This is a reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said, "Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. So sell your possessions and give alms. Make purses for yourselves that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. Be dressed for action. Have your lamps lit. Be like those who are waiting for their master to return from the wedding banquet, so that they may open the door for him as soon as he comes and knocks. Blessed are those slaves whom the master finds alert when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he will fasten his belt and have them sit down to eat, and he himself will come and serve them. If he comes during the middle of the night or near dawn and finds them so, blessed are those slaves. But know this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." The gospel, the good news of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Please be seated. People were very familiar in the first century Middle East. They were very familiar with the idea that there are gods. It's not an abstract or unusual thought. The gods were very real to them. Now, while the Hebrews, the people of Israel, knew that they were Yahweh's people, that Yahweh was their God, they knew all about the Greek gods and the stories of the Greek gods, especially if they had been educated in Greek culture, which was all around them. So they also knew about Roman gods. So they knew about Neptune and Saturn and Jupiter and Apollo and Artemis. These were familiar to them. Now, because they lived on the land that they did, they knew Canaanite people, and they knew the stories of Baal and the Canaanite people's gods. And the whole repertoire of those, they knew all this. It was part of the fabric of their lives. And they know their God, Yahweh, might be able to beat the other gods in an arm wrestle. But they're not sure. One thing they are sure of is God is their God. This God is 900 years later proclaimed and enacted in Jesus of Nazareth. Now, when this God is proclaimed, it's really unusual. It's weird. It's strange. Because in all the stories of gods and goddesses, people tell these stories, and these gods and goddesses are capricious. They're mean. They're thin-skinned. They're easily offended if you didn't worship them right or sacrifice the right goat on a given day. They're vicious when they're angered. And they will also cause crops to die, insects to come, because you irritated them. And it's all about them. So when the Hebrews and Jesus of Nazareth proclaim a God, this God cares about people's fear. This God cares about people being afraid, being terrorized. It's so unusual. It flies in the face of how gods are supposed to be. They don't care about people's feelings. No, this God, their tradition says, this God cares deeply. So you heard in the first reading, don't be afraid. And you heard Jesus begin by saying, "Don't be afraid, little flock." Our feelings, especially our fears, matter to our God. And God consoles us, sends the Spirit, opens doors in our hearts when we are afraid. And to be human is to be afraid because we realize this is a fragile body and stuff can happen to it. Things are made to be broken in this universe. So being afraid is a natural part of that. But again and again, the strength in the word from God is, I'm with you. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Now, there is never a promise, never, that bad things or terrifying things or scary things, God will keep those from happening. There is no such promise. And a lot of people who have faith and participate in their faith quit because God didn't hold up God's end of the bargain and keep surprising, unexpected, bad things from happening. He's not meeting his job description. But there are no promises of that. In this life, the children of God are protected from nothing, yet mysteriously sustained in and through all things. That is a promise. Don't be afraid. I am with you. Jesus enacts this in himself. He's a model for how to do this. Now, I want to tell you something also kind of weird. Last week, all through vacation in Connecticut, one of the friends I got together with is a retired Lutheran bishop, used to be Lutheran bishop in Wisconsin for 12 years. So we had a long breakfast time. And this is one of the weird things we did. We figured out how many times in our career we've held up the bread and the wine and shared the story, this is my body, this is my blood. Mine was, we crunched it out, we asked the waitress for a pencil. We crunched it out. Mine was 1,650 times. 1,650 times. I wouldn't even tell you what his was because he's older than me and he's been in ministry a long time. But 1,650 times I've stood behind altars and said, in the night in which he was betrayed by a friend whom he loved, on the night before his arrest, on the night before he was to be tortured, on the night before he was to die, Jesus took bread and gave thanks. What? Do you know, after 1,650 times, when I say those words, I get emotional. It just blows my mind. He took bread and gave thanks. What? In this, we are invited into that as our story as well. And it's enough to make us get a little emotional. I got to tell you something that I reflected on this vacation about you all. And I thought to myself, every now and then, not too often, but every now and then, somebody ought to tell you some good stuff about you. A little bit. So some good stuff about you, of any place that I've served. When I say the Eucharistic prayer over the bread and wine and tell that story, and sometimes the Eucharistic prayers we use in the ELW are kind of long. I look out at you, and every time, your minds are not wandering. You're not staring at your bulletin. You're not scratching your nose. You're with me. We're all together in that prayer. And your prayerfulness at that moment strengthens my faith. We are afraid, and God understands that we are afraid. Why is being afraid for the people of God not a good thing? What does God care about when we are afraid? What does God want us to spit in the face of what is causing us fear and to declare thanks? Thank you. We say thank you in the worst situation for God's presence. Why is that a hindrance to be afraid? Two things, I think, that matter to God. One is God is against God's people suffering. And terror is suffering. And right now there is a purposeful activity in this country to cause terror. And for people to be in terror, for their families, for their lives, for their safety, for their disappearance, this matters to us. And we are to be the presence, God's hands that heal, that strengthen, that comfort. But here's the second thing about what the problem is with being fearful, is it stops you and me from speaking the brave truth. Fear stops us from telling the truth. We're afraid. Fear stops us from doing the brave, courageous act. And God's depending on you and me, telling the brave truth. God's depending on you and me to enact God's care for those who are fearful, for those who are afraid. This is God's work, and it's truly shared by God with us to do. What a great honor. What a wonderful thing. We are promised that God is with us and that God cares about our feelings. God cares, sustains us in our fears. It's a final story. Long ago, in certain branches of the Mohawk family, First Peoples in the United States, indigenous peoples, Native Americans. This was a custom shared in many of those clans. The custom was a rite of passage when a child was transitioning into young adult. Adolescent was transitioning into young adult. The entire tribe would escort that Indian youth deep into the forest. Rite of passage. They would gather around and they would blindfold the youth. And then the youth would be ordered to spend the entire night, they got there as the sun was setting, and not move from their place under the tree in the forest. Not move. Now, as they had to sit there, the sounds of the forest, the wild animals, the snapping of twigs and branches, the mysterious wind, howling of wolves in the distance, they had to confront their fear. And they were afraid. Total darkness and alone. In the morning, as soon as they felt the rays, the heat of the sun on their face, they were to take off their blindfold. And then, as their eyes adjusted, that Indian youth would be shocked and amazed, and their heart would skip beats of love, for what they would see is their own father standing a little bit in the distance with bow and arrow drawn. Indeed, the father had been there all through the night, ready to strike down the terror that flies by day or by night. And the Indian youth would think to themselves, if only I had known that my father was with me all night, I would not have had to been so afraid. Fear is the mind slayer. It's the faith killer. It stops us from doing the brave, courageous thing. But we gather to remind each other that in all our feelings and in our fear, our God, our loving parent is with you and with me. The Greek text says, ma phobos, phobic, phobia. The authors of the scriptures and the followers of Jesus knew that fear hurts and that fear can be a problem. And the antidote has been given us in Emmanuel, the God who is beside you and me.